June 22nd, 1941, 4:15 in the morning. The western edge of the Soviet Union. Dawn is not gentle here. It arrives with engines. A low mist clings to the fields, pale and thin, the kind that dulls sound and bends distance. German artillery is already awake. Steel doors slam. Boots hit mud. Radios hiss with clipped voices, confident voices. The plan has been rehearsed until it feels permanent. The Red Army will break. It always does. Lieutenant Hans Becker stands in the open hatch of his Panzer, fingers resting on cold steel. He smells fuel, oil, damp earth. Somewhere ahead, fields stretch toward villages with names he cannot pronounce. This is supposed to be a campaign of weeks, maybe months at most. That is what the briefing said. That is what everyone believes. Then the shooting starts. At first, it is routine. Soviet anti-tank guns bark and go silent. Infantry scatter. Becker's gunner calls targets calmly, almost bored. The Panzer rolls forward, tracks grinding through grass and fence posts, through a country that seems too wide to ever end. And then something moves at the edge of the field. It is not fast. It does not rush. It simply appears. A squat shape pushes through the haze, sloped armor catching the early light. Wide tracks chew through mud that would trap a lighter vehicle. The turret turns, slow and deliberate, like a man turning his head after hearing his name. Becker frowns. He has studied every Soviet tank silhouette. This one does not fit cleanly into his memory. Probably another light tank, someone mutters over the intercom. The gun fires. The shell hits the front armor and glances away with a sharp, ringing crack, like a hammer striking a bell. The sound is wrong, too clean, too loud. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then the unknown tank fires back. The recoil shakes the ground. Dirt sprays across Becker's visor. A Panzer to his left erupts in smoke, its turret hatch blown open, flames licking outward like something alive. Silence follows, thick and heavy. This is not how this is supposed to go. By noon, Becker has seen 3 of the new tanks. They burn when hit from the side. They stall. Their crews sometimes bail out, young men with soot-blackened faces and wide eyes. The German officers gather around maps and shrug. Crude machines, they decide. Poor optics. Bad radios. Rough welds. A peasant's tank. Someone laughs and says it looks like it was built with a hammer. The name spreads slowly through the ranks. T-34. For now, it is a curiosity, a surprise. Nothing more. Weeks pass. The laughter continues. In the dust outside Smolensk, Becker watches a captured T-34 sit abandoned near the road. Its paint is chipped. The inside smells of burned oil and sweat. The gearbox is rough. The turret cramped. He taps the armor with his knuckle and shakes his head. This thing, he says to no one in particular, this is what they are proud of? Yet even as he says it, he notices the slope of the armor. How shots tend to slide rather than bite. How the wide tracks leave deep, confident marks in the mud. Far to the east, in places Becker will never see, factories are already awake. In Nizhny Tagil, in Chelyabinsk, in plants evacuated beyond the reach of German bombers, the sound of machinery never stops. The air is thick with smoke and iron dust. Women in headscarves guide red-hot steel into presses. Teenagers haul parts with hands wrapped in rags. There are no speeches here, no flags, only quotas scratched onto walls and crossed out each day. A foreman named Sergei Petrov counts hulls as they roll down the line. The welds are ugly. He knows that. The finish is rough. He also knows none of that matters. What matters is that another T-34 exists now when one did not yesterday. Back at the front, autumn turns roads into rivers. German supply trucks sink to their axles. Engines overheat. Men curse the mud, the endless mud. And through it, the T-34s keep moving. They appear in places they should not reach. They cross ground that should stop them. They take hits that should kill them. Still, the jokes continue. The German crews call them blind, deaf, poorly trained. They point to knocked-out hulls and say the enemy bleeds just like anyone else. But Becker notices something else. Each month, there are more of them. By winter, the laughter has thinned. It does not vanish. Not yet. But it sounds different now. Shorter. Forced. The kind of laughter men use when they want to believe their own words. On a frozen night, Becker writes in his notebook by flashlight. He does not write about fear. He writes about numbers, about silhouettes on the horizon, about a feeling he cannot name. Somewhere ahead, unseen and uncounted, the T-34s are waiting. Not as individuals, not as curiosities, but as a tide. And tides, Becker is beginning to understand, do not care who laughs first. Winter, 1942. Before dawn, somewhere west of Moscow, the cold is not sharp here, it is heavy. It presses down on men and machines alike, stealing sound, stealing strength. Snow crunches under boots. Engines groan as if reluctant to wake. Hans Becker no longer laughs. His Panzer sits half buried beside a frozen tree line, exhaust steaming weakly into the gray air. The radio crackles with reports that do not make sense. Soviet armor moving through terrain marked impassable. Tanks appearing after nights when scouts reported nothing. Losses that come too quickly to tally. Becker rubs his gloved hands together and peers through his optics. A line of dark shapes crawls across the white field. They come on without drama. No flags, no signals, just movement. The first shell hits a T-34 square in the front plate and ricochets upward, screaming into the sky. The second does the same. The gunner swears, voice tight now, not bored, not amused. When the Soviet return fire comes, it is not wild, it is methodical. A panzer farther down the line takes a hit and stops dead. Another tries to reverse and throws a track. Smoke drifts low, trapped by the cold air. Becker tastes metal at the back of his throat. This is not a duel. It feels like pressure, like being leaned on. Later, long after the field is quiet, Becker walks among the wrecks. German and Soviet machines sit together, blackened and frozen, their outlines softened by snow. He crouches beside a destroyed T-34, brushing ice from its sloped armor. It is crude. He can see that clearly now. The weld seams are uneven, the turret ring is rough, inside everything is tight, uncomfortable, unforgiving. And yet, this tank was here, in winter, under fire, doing exactly what it was meant to do. Far from the front, the story is quieter and louder at the same time. In the Urals, Sergei Petrov finishes another shift without noticing the hour. The clocks in the factory stopped being relevant months ago. The lights stay on. The machines do not sleep. When one breaks, it is dragged aside and stripped for parts. The war has compressed everything: time, choices, mercy. Sergei watches a new hull roll forward, still warm, paint barely dry. A young woman named Anya guides it with hand signals. She used to study literature. Now she knows the weight of armor plates by instinct. No one here argues about elegance. There are no debates about comfort or refinement. The T-34 is not meant to impress. It is meant to exist, to be built quickly, to be repaired with a hammer and stubbornness, to accept flaws and keep going anyway. They simplify the design again. Fewer parts, faster assembly, rougher finish, output rises. One tank becomes 10, 10 become 100, 100 becomes something harder to grasp. At the front, Becker feels the change before he understands it. In the summer dust of 1942, the Soviets lose tanks by the hundreds. Becker watches them burn, watches crews scramble out or vanish inside flame. By any old measure, this should mean something. This should slow them. It does not. Each engagement blends into the next. Knockout 3 and 5 appear days later. Destroy a column, and another takes its place along the same road. German crews start counting differently now. Not victories, not kills. They count how long they can hold. One evening, Becker sits with his driver, Otto, sharing a tin of lukewarm soup. Neither speaks for a while. They don't stop. Otto finally says, not angry, just tired. Becker nods. He has no answer. What unsettles him most is not the tank itself. It is the pattern. The sense that the enemy has chosen a path that does not require perfection. Only persistence. The T-34 absorbs mistakes, bad visibility, poor radios, inexperienced crews. It forgives all of it by being present in numbers Becker has never faced before. By late 1942, the German command responds. New guns, heavier armor, new tanks promised. Briefings speak of restoring balance, of regaining control. Becker listens, but his confidence no longer returns with the words, because balance assumes both sides are playing the same game. And somewhere deep in the frozen ground, Becker feels it shift. The war is no longer about sharper blades. It is about weight, about endurance, about who can place more steel into the world, faster, and keep doing it when the cost becomes unbearable. As the year turns, rumors spread of a great offensive planned for the summer. A decisive blow, a place where everything will be settled, a place called Kursk. Becker circles it on his map with a pencil, pressing hard enough to tear the paper slightly. He does not know why his hand trembles, but he knows this. Whatever waits, there will not be a joke. May 1943. Early evening, south of Kursk. The land here rolls gently, almost kindly. Open fields, low ridges, villages that seem to sink into the earth rather than rise from it. From a distance, it looks like a place where nothing dramatic should ever happen. Hans Becker knows better. His unit has been here for weeks, engines idling, moving at night, hiding by day. The waiting is worse than combat. It stretches time until every sound feels louder than it should. Every rumor grows teeth. The men clean weapons that are already clean. They argue over nothing. They sleep in fragments. The offensive has a name now, a promise wrapped in certainty. This time, they are told, the enemy will be encircled and crushed. This time, the Red Army will bleed faster than it can replace its losses. Becker listens without interrupting. He has learned to watch faces instead of maps. Across the lines, the Soviets are not hiding. At dawn, German reconnaissance aircraft report movement everywhere. Trenches dug in layers, anti-tank guns sunk deep into the earth, minefields laid so thick they blur together on the charts. And behind it all, beyond the first defensive belts, Something larger waits. In a command bunker, Becker studies a grainy aerial photograph. Dark dots cluster in the rear areas, too many to count clearly. Tanks, not scattered, not probing, massed. At the same time, hundreds of miles away, Sergei Petrov stands on a catwalk above the factory floor and watches another shift begin. The air shudders with noise. Steel plates slam into place. Sparks rain down like brief artificial stars. They are building faster than ever now. Corners cut, steps removed. Anything that does not help the tank move, shoot, or survive is stripped away. Sergei signs off on hull after hull. He does not know where most of them will go. He does not need to. His job is to make sure they exist. Anya passes him on the stairs, her face smudged with soot. She smiles, just barely. "How many today?" she asks. Sergei checks the chalkboard. "Enough," he says. It is not optimism. It is arithmetic. Back at the front, Becker walks the edge of a field and watches engineers work. Mine plows test the soil. Infantry practice moving through marked lanes. Everything is careful, precise, yet the ground itself feels wrong. At night, Becker hears engines far off beyond the horizon, not one or two, many. A low, continuous rumble that never fully fades, like distant thunder that refuses to break into a storm. A young radio operator named Klaus sits beside Becker one evening, nervously adjusting his headset. "Sir," he says quietly, "they say the Russians are letting us come." Becker looks at him. "Letting us?" Klaus nods. "They're not attacking. They're waiting." The idea settles heavily. On the 4th of July, the order finally comes. The guns open before sunrise. The earth shakes as if struck repeatedly with a massive fist. Smoke rises in columns. German armor surges forward, engines roaring, tracks biting into churned soil. At first, progress is real. Lines are breached, positions overrun. Becker's panzer advances behind a wall of fire and dust, heart pounding, senses narrowed to commands and movement. Then the resistance thickens. Anti-tank fire slams into the formation from hidden angles. Mines detonate, throwing vehicles sideways. Infantry disappear into trenches that seem endless. And then, over the ridge ahead, they come. Not charging, not dramatic. Rolling forward in lines that stretch left and right beyond sight. T-34s. They crest the rise like a moving horizon, turrets already turning, guns flashing. Becker feels his stomach drop, not from fear alone, but from recognition. This is what all of it was for. The battlefield becomes sound and motion. Impacts ring against armor. Dirt rains down. Orders overlap and break apart in the radio traffic. Becker fires. Scores a hit. Watches one tank burn. Then another takes its place. And another. The Soviets do not maneuver for elegance. They advance into fire, accepting losses without hesitation. Disabled tanks become cover. Wrecks pile up and form new lines of shelter. It is brutal, impersonal, relentless. Becker realizes something in that moment, something that has nothing to do with tactics. The T-34 is not here to win cleanly. It is here to be spent. Hours blur together. The sun climbs and falls. Smoke turns the sky a dirty orange. By evening, Becker's unit has advanced only a fraction of what was planned. The field ahead is littered with steel carcasses, German and Soviet alike. And still, more T-34s roll forward from the rear, fresh paint dulled by dust, crews young and silent. As night falls, Becker slumps against the turret interior, exhausted beyond thought. He listens to the ticking of cooling metal and the distant unbroken rumble of engines. The wait is no longer theoretical. It is here, pressing, unavoidable, and this is only the beginning. July 8th, 1943. Midday. Inside the Kursk salient. The battlefield no longer looks like land. It looks like something broken beyond repair. Hans Becker's panzer crawls forward at a walking pace, weaving between wrecks that were machines only hours ago. Burned-out hulls dot the fields like blackened stones. The air stinks of fuel, scorched rubber and hot metal. Smoke hangs low, thick enough to blur distance and steal color from everything it touches. This is not maneuver warfare anymore. This is pressure. Becker grips the rim of his hatch and scans left, then right. Every direction looks the same. Craters overlapping craters. Tanks frozen mid-motion, turrets twisted at unnatural angles. Men move carefully now, stepping around fires that still crackle softly, as if the ground itself refuses to cool. Over the radio, voices overlap. Requests for ammunition. Reports of knocked-out vehicles. Call signs. Becker recognizes growing fewer by the hour. German crews are fighting well. He knows that. Better guns, better optics, better training. On paper, they should still dominate. But paper does not stop tanks. Ahead, a group of T-34s advances in a staggered line. Becker fires. One erupts in flame. Another slews to a halt, tracks blown off. The rest keep coming, driving past their disabled comrades without slowing. There is no hesitation. A shell slams into Becker's panzer, striking the side armor. The impact throws him against the hatch rim, rattling his teeth. The armor holds, barely. The driver swears and keeps moving. Becker realizes, with a clarity that feels almost calm, that the Soviets are not reacting to losses. They are not adjusting, not pulling back, not pausing to regroup. They are feeding tanks into the fight, like a factory feeds steel into a press. Somewhere far behind the front, Sergei Petrov feels it without seeing it. The production board is filled edge to edge with chalk marks. Each one represents a completed hull. Sergei wipes dust from his eyes and signs another form. The numbers blur together now. They stopped feeling abstract weeks ago. He knows men are dying inside these tanks. He does not pretend otherwise, but he also knows this machine, this ugly, unforgiving machine, is holding the line long enough for something else to happen. Endurance is doing the killing now. Back at Kursk, Becker's unit receives orders to hold position. No advance, no withdrawal, just hold. The word feels strange, heavy. They dig in where tanks were never meant to stop. Infantry cling to trenches beside armored hulls, using them as cover. The lines are no longer clear. Everything overlaps. Smoke erases direction. A young loader named Emil sits slumped against the ammunition rack, hands shaking as he reloads. "How many is that now?" he asks, not looking up. Becker does not answer. He has lost count. By the afternoon, the battlefield has shifted subtly but unmistakably. German armor still destroys Soviet tanks at a high rate. Yet every destroyed T-34 seems to buy time rather than space. Time for another unit to arrive. Time for another line to form. Time for the weight to build. Becker watches a Soviet crew abandon a burning tank and run toward the rear. Before they reach cover, another T-34 rolls past them, engine roaring, gun already seeking targets. No pause, no glance back. It is not bravery, not exactly. It is something colder. By nightfall, Becker's panzer is low on ammunition. The radio reports that reserves are thin. Replacement vehicles are delayed. Fuel is rationed. The Soviets attack again after dark, using flares that turn the battlefield into a flickering nightmare of light and shadow. Tanks loom suddenly out of smoke, then vanish again. Gunfire echoes without direction. Becker fires until the gun clicks empty. And when silence finally settles, it feels unnatural, fragile. He climbs out of the hatch and stands on the turret, looking across the field. Fires burn everywhere. The ground glows faintly red beneath drifting smoke. The horizon is crowded with the silhouettes of more tanks, waiting their turn. For the first time since the war began, Becker does not think about winning. He thinks about surviving the next hour. Far to the east, in factories that do not sleep, the presses keep moving. Chalk marks are added and erased. Another shift begins. Another tank exists. At Kursk, the German armored spear has not broken, but it has stopped. And stopping, Becker realizes, may be enough. July 13th, 1943, early morning, north of Prokhorovka. The guns do not open all at once anymore. They stutter. They cough. Some remain silent, empty, or broken. Smoke drifts lazily now, no longer forced upward by constant blasts. The battlefield exhales, exhausted. Hans Becker wakes inside his panzer to a strange sensation. Stillness. The engine is off. The metal beneath him is cold. For a moment he thinks he has gone deaf. Then distant artillery thumps, far away, uneven. Not the wall of sound from days before, something weaker. He climbs out of the hatch. What he sees does not feel like victory or defeat. It feels like aftermath. The field is a graveyard of intention. Hundreds of tanks lie scattered across the ground, German and Soviet so tangled together that it is hard to tell where one line ended and the other began. Tracks overlap. Turrets point skyward or bury themselves in earth. Smoke rises in thin, tired threads. Becker steps carefully, boots crunching on shattered glass and metal fragments. He passes a T-34 split open by fire. Inside, the crew remains where they fell. He looks away, jaw tight. Nearby, German mechanics work in silence, stripping usable parts from disabled vehicles. There is no chatter now, no jokes, only efficiency born of necessity. Over the radio, the message comes through in clipped phrases. The offensive is halted. Units are to consolidate. Defensive posture, effective immediately. Becker closes his eyes for a moment. This was not the ending he imagined when the campaign began. There is no decisive breakthrough, no collapse, just stopping. Across the lines, the Soviets do not surge forward. They do not need to. Their tanks sit in depth, engines idling or shut down, rows extending beyond sight. Fresh crews stand beside them, waiting. Not eager, not triumphant, just ready. This is what Becker finally understands. The T-34 was never meant to deliver a single, perfect blow. It was built to survive a bad one, to be replaced when it failed, to return again and again until resistance wore thin. Skill still mattered. Courage still mattered. But weight mattered more. Far away, Sergei Petrov reads a bulletin posted near the factory floor. Kursk, heavy losses. Line held. He nods once and folds the paper. Around him, machines continue their rhythm. Anya guides another hole forward. Her movement's automatic now. No cheers rise. No one stops working. Because the war is not over. But something has changed. At Kursk, Becker sits on the edge of his turret as the sun climbs higher. He watches Soviet recovery crews towing wrecks away, clearing lanes through the dead steel. He realizes that for every destroyed T-34 he sees, another has already taken its place somewhere beyond the horizon. The laughter from 1941 feels like it belonged to another lifetime. He thinks back to the first time he saw one emerging from the mist, shrugging off a hit that should have killed it. He remembers dismissing it as crude, unfinished, unworthy. He understands now how dangerous that thought was. The T-34 did not need to be perfect. It needed to exist in numbers Germany could not match. It needed factories that could bleed steel without stopping. It needed a doctrine willing to accept loss in exchange for time. At Kursk, time ran out. Not in a single moment, not with a dramatic collapse, but quietly, irreversibly. As Becker climbs back into his Panzer, he knows the war will continue. There will be new machines, new plans, new hopes. But armored superiority, the thing Germany once took for granted, has slipped away somewhere between the wrecks and the factories, between laughter and arithmetic. The tank everyone laughed at did not win the war at Kursk, but it proved something far more important, that the balance had tilted, and it would never tilt back.